Have you ever imagined embarking on an epic journey into the unknown, discovering exotic lands and cultures completely different from your own? Today, we're diving into the incredible story of Marco Polo, the man who crossed continents and revolutionized how the Western world viewed the East. In this video, you'll discover how his adventures opened the eyes of medieval Europe to a new era of exploration and cultural exchange. Stick with me until the end, because what Marco Polo saw and experienced is breathtaking, and it might just change the way you see the world too. Before we talk about Marco Polo's journey, we need to understand the world he lived in. We're in the 13th century, a time of great transformations and instability in Europe. The Crusades were ongoing, and trade with the East was limited and full of mystery. The Silk Road, the main trade route between the West and the East, had existed for centuries, but few Europeans dared venture beyond the known borders. It's in this context that Marco Polo emerges, born in Venice, one of the richest and most powerful cities of the time. Marco's father and uncle had already traveled to China, and it was through these family connections that Marco's adventure would begin. At 17 years old, Marco Polo set off with his father and uncle on a journey that would change his life forever. The destination, the court of the powerful emperor Kublai Khan, grandson of the famous conqueror Genghis Khan in China. The route was incredibly dangerous and challenging, with thousands of kilometers crossing deserts, mountains, and lands inhabited by unfamiliar peoples. For 3 long years, they crossed Asia, passing through places we now know as Iran, Afghanistan, and Mongolia. This was a journey filled with challenges, where Marco not only survived, but was also amazed by the different cultures, technologies, and exotic products he encountered along the way. His contact with such diverse civilizations would shape his worldview for the rest of his life. When they finally arrived at Kublai Khan's court, Marco Polo was welcomed as a true emissary of the West. The emperor, fascinated by the young traveler, kept him in his court for many years, sending Marco on official missions throughout his vast empire. Marco Polo's time in China was one of the most significant moments of his life. He spent about 17 years in Kublai Khan's empire, visiting remote regions and documenting the wonders he saw. One of the things that impressed him the most was the organization and sophistication of China, something practically unknown to medieval Europe. He described giant cities like Beijing, which he called the most beautiful and well-organized city in the world. He reported the use of paper money, something completely innovative to Europeans, and how trade was extremely organized, with vibrant markets and well-established routes. Moreover, Marco Polo was one of the first Europeans to talk about coal, used as fuel, and inventions like the Chinese postal system. All these fascinating descriptions would be recorded in his famous book years later. After nearly 24 years away from Venice, Marco Polo finally returned home. His arrival coincided with a war between Venice and Genoa, and Marco was eventually captured by the Genovese enemies. It was during his time as a prisoner that he began to narrate his adventures to a fellow inmate, Rustichello da Pisa, who transformed these tales into the famous book, The Travels of Marco Polo. The book quickly became a success in Europe, although many believed that the stories were exaggerated or even invented. However, over time, many of Marco's accounts were confirmed by other explorers. His work went on to inspire generations of adventurers and navigators, including Christopher Columbus, who carried a copy of the book on his own voyages. Even centuries later, Marco Polo's legacy lives on. His detailed descriptions of Asia helped shape how the West viewed the East and fueled European interest in exploring and trading with distant lands. The Travels of Marco Polo wasn't just a geographical guide, but a work that brought knowledge about a civilization as advanced as Europe's. Today, Marco Polo's name is synonymous with adventure and discovery. Although some details of his life remain shrouded in mystery, the impact of his journeys on the Western world is undeniable. Marco Polo's story shows us how one person can change an entire continent's perception of the world. His travels weren't just about adventure, but about opening new doors to understanding between different cultures. If you found this journey as fascinating as I did, don't forget to leave your comment below. Which part of Marco Polo's story surprised you the most? And of course, If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any content. Every week, we bring you incredible stories of explorers, conquests, and events that changed the course of history. So don't miss out. Så tiden. Well, Wart, your next adventure is just one click away.